All right. So my name is Ofra Gelman. I should have probably started with that. I'm with Dwell Design Studio. I'm an architect. We have 7 offices across the United States, and we specialize in many different types of architecture, but my specialty is luxury hospitality. Since my very first project coming out of architecture school was the Bellagio here in Las Vegas. Every architecture firm I worked at since then, they always thought of me as kind of the specialty, the hotel special. So that was kind of decided for me, apparently. And I'll get you guys to tell about yourself. So Brett, can you
Sure.
start?
I run design and construction for Sage Hospitality Group. We're out of Denver, Colorado. We have about 65 hotels, 15 or so F&B and entertainment outlets. Both my colleagues Patrick and Walter, our CEO, spoke prior to this. We are in the boutique space as well as the luxury space. Really delighted to be here. Thanks, guys.
Hussein?
Yeah, I'm managing principal of Wimberley Interiors in Los Angeles, which is a studio of WATG. We're a full-service design firm providing services in architecture, planning, landscape, strategy, but I head up our interiors studio. Been in the business of designing hospitality spaces for, I want to say, a little over 29 years. So I live and breathe hospitality. That's my story.
My name is Jonathan Weislow. I am principal, regional director, vice president. I have like all these corporate job titles. They acquired our company. Cumming Group, who's the largest pure play project management company, acquired our company, which was Amicon Management. We were the largest Miami-based owner representation firm about 2 years ago. So big corporate titles and things like this is not what we did. And now I come to these things and they put a microphone in my hand. But we are the largest pure play project management firm in the world. Myself and a couple others run our Miami office. We operate in virtually every market sector and fix problems and build teams for a living. So,
Thank you.
you got it.
All right, so as I said, we're going to talk about design, and I think what we need to focus on, what we would like to focus on, is some of the changes that happen in the design world in the last, 30 years, 50 years maybe, that every few years, every, decade or something, we rethink the design of the hotels, we rethink the hotel, the redesign of luxury hotel, because things change, right? And one of the things that change is that, our clients have different needs. And so I want to talk a little bit about Instagram moments. You have a generation that goes to hotels, they take pictures, they want some sort of experiential that they can share with the world. What kind of things do you see in your hotels that you can share with us about those Instagram moments? So let's start with Jonathan.
Yeah, I think they're labeled as Instagram moments, but it's really like all sorts of media moments now. And I think the average age. Actually, this is a good question for the audience. What do you think the average age is of a media creator, a social media creator? Just like shout out a number. 16. I heard a 20. Anyone else? 29, 40. Okay, you're but it's Price is Right, so you're wrong. So 37 is the average age. I happen to be 37. But so it's not so much about just Instagram and kind of sharing what you're doing. I think people are also operating in a creator economy and finding ways to monetize things on social media. There's a lot of, they used to be called side hustles, and really it's just ways of monetizing your personal interests. A lot of people don't get validation from their day jobs. Don't raise your hands and say that you resonate with that. But there are a lot of people who get validation from what they do on the side, and they do this a lot of times while traveling. So what we're seeing a lot of now, there's actually a partner that I work with in Miami called Nucleus Hub, and they're creating these creator spaces in hotels right now. In rooms, on floors, in conference areas, and it gives people an opportunity to host podcasts or just have a sexy background that gives them credibility for the media they're putting out there. The media services are being provided. The production at a cost is being provided by these third-party providers, and I think that's kind of where things are heading now. I think we're a little bit past, and I'll let the designers speak to it. This this is my personal opinion, but I think we're a little bit past just like cool area where you take a picture and there's a neon sign to make yourself look, sexy, rich, and social.
You're right.
So, cool. Yep. Take that, because clearly yeah.
No, and you're exactly right. When we're approached on a project, we're asked about creating Instagrammable spaces, and our response is always that let's not focus on one item. Let's really create a narrative for the guest's experience and looking at the property in its holistic way. So creating, adding depth to the design, creating layers, and truly you have to be very cohesive in your design. So from going from the public space all the way into your guest rooms, making sure that narrative is continuing, and let that be sort of the journey for the guests to take their moments and generate their content, which we find that is more successful, because what that does is it creates an aspirational I want to say not a value, but an aspiration look and feel for others that are going into your Instagram pages, and they want to be in those destinations, and they want to explore those destinations. Simultaneously, I feel like there's two different groups that are kind of look at these sort of spaces. One is the non-industry people, which are not associated with hospitality, but do enjoy going into hospitality spaces. And the others are the ones that I call them as industry peers, which are related into the hospitality industry, whether through managing or developing or operational, or like I am in design. And we look through Instagram moments for inspirations to see what's current, what's happening, what are the layerings, what is going on. So it's an interesting approach, but again, looking at the design in a holistic way is where it starts to create those moments.
Yeah, no, did any of you guys post to Instagram in the last 24 hours? You don't have to be embarrassed. I did. LinkedIn, any social media.
Yep.
Just interesting to me who posts and why we do. I by the way, I've never. Well, maybe on a handful of occasions, actually tried to make an Instagram moment or a social media moment. But I think about it as a reflection. Social media is a reflection of who we want to be as a consumer. And so, what I try and do is I try and think about how we can make people feel, and when they feel really incredibly special, they'll take care of the social media on their own. Actually, I'm more interested in getting data back than pushing data out. Via design. So to your point, I love looking at it from a flow in to kind of guide decision making. But as far as an outward flow, they'll do it on their own if the done. You'll hear me talk about two things today. I think one is authenticity. Is long are over the days, I hope, or at least we have very little interest in forcing that moment. But if the moment makes you feel special enough, you'll take a photograph. I always find, I'm not in Instagram specifically, but the minute I find myself taking a selfie in front of something, I try and ask, why? Why did I send it to my friends? What is about this moment that's a reflection of who I am and as a consumer, as a hotel goer, that made me want to tell people why I'm here, what food I'm eating, and what. So there's just an authenticity that I want to return to, and that is, and we'll talk about this, but that is really understanding who that customer was. And to a discussion we'll have in a little bit is how do you make that flexible as you kind of pivot from person to person, because that is going to be different in the middle of the week from the weekend and so forth. So that's allowing for that flexibility. They'll post it on their own. Right.
Well, I'm glad you used the word flexibility, because that's kind of like leading up to the next question. When kind of like the old traditional hotels, when you would come in, you have your front desk, you have your bar, maybe you have your breakfast area, and over the years we kind of became more conscious of doing flexible spaces, things that can change during the day. Maybe a coffee bar in the morning that turns into a liquor bar in the evening and things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about these kind of flexible spaces? Hussein, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, again, you know, we get approached on that sort of requirement by both operators and clients a lot. We're creating flexible spaces, you know, and what are those spaces? And like lately we've been seeing where, actually we're currently working on a project internationally where originally the client was thinking about having a theater in the facility, and they decided to take it out. They want to create a multifunctional space. You know, they want the space to be, you know, if it's a meeting room, it could probably be flexible enough and also work as a yoga studio, or for that matter, if it's a banquet hall, it could turn into a co-work space. So we're getting challenged by clients and operators a lot on looking at spaces in a much more flexible and a comfortable way. You know, I mean, obviously the design has to be adaptable. And for lobbies, what we're seeing is reception, lobbies, lobby lounge are all meshing into one sort of a space where, you know, the lounge could be a place where you could hang out for breakfast, or during the day it turns into sort of a co-working space, or just, you know, just socializing or having meetings. And then in the evening, those spaces turn into some more sort of intimate spaces. And how we approach that is, you know, through using flexible furnishings. Lighting is the biggest player. It used to be that lighting was just, you know, oh, can we just get so many wattages, but now it's like, how do you kind of change the look of the space from, you know, going from a bright space to a softer light space, or changing the temperatures of the light of the space, and it really changes the dynamic of the overall space. So we're always looking at that, and of course materiality.
A lot of F&B spaces, obviously, just due to the day parting to the evening, are going to be obvious answer. And I think, so that's what came to mind for me too. I think a lot about how we utilize PDRs as meeting rooms and how we break things down. I was enthralled sitting outside. Only the nerdy design folks are looking up at the air wall system going, this is really interesting. Everyone's also, no one cares. So I think about that type of flexibility. But I also, I was speaking with a friend who's a very high-end New York City condo designer. And she was saying to me, I said, what's a trend right now? Tell me what's going on. She said, oh, we're doing all closed kitchens. She said, we're closing off all the kitchens. No one wants to see a kitchen anymore. So, and we got into a conversation about inflexible spaces and purpose behind spaces also being quite important. And I think, look, of course, we're always looking to drive revenue from a space during the morning and the night. If the group comes, if the University of Florida is there one day and then someone else there the next day, it's fine. But there is something also in these spaces that are purposeful. And like, I can't wait to go this evening. I saw the bar there. It's just sitting there. It's beautiful. I'll come back tonight. And I think that I don't mean to go down this road because you asked about flexibility and went the other direction. But yeah. I found it really interesting that she was saying that she's looking at spaces that are so purposeful. And a good example of a space that I thought was purposeful was actually in this hotel, which I'm going to ruin one of my things for the last question. But I had a cocktail last night listening to jazz music, and I had breakfast there this morning. And I never would have been able to tell. I think some of you guys were there. For both, maybe, or the whole time, maybe. But I had no idea that it was the two. And these hotels are so gangly that I never even would have known I was in the same spot. I thought that was highly successful because it felt purposeful in both. And I think that's, in flexibility, lots of things can transform. But how do we kind of keep the purpose of it to give it real life?
I think we nailed the topic. I'm not sure I have more to offer. I mean, we have a limited amount of time, but I think both of you have tremendous insight.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go to the next item, which is authenticity and culture. I think a lot of times, you know, when the brands kind of decided to create a design that kind of repeats itself over and over again, and the idea was that you have a sense of belonging to a certain space and kind of recognizing it no matter where you went, all of a sudden kind of backfired, right? Because people didn't know where they were. You know, they moved from one city to another state, another city, and the hotel looked the same everywhere they went, and now they felt like there was no authenticity, there was nothing about the culture of the place that they were in. So how do you feel you can make those changes, and what are the experiences that you've had with some of your properties?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take that one
Yeah.
as a Miami resident, and we're in the Fontainebleau, which is done by the Sofer family, and it's all Miami for the most part concepts. Like I've got El Bagel here, which is down the street from my house, Coconut Grove. There's Miami Slice Pizza. You've got Live, which is the same nightclub. You've got Poppy Steak, which is Miami-based. You've got Komodo, which is Miami-based. It's Screwed Hospitality. Like, to me, I think that's, I mean, I probably shouldn't be saying this in here, but I think that's inauthentic. I mean, you're in Vegas. Like, if I'm in Vegas, and this is from my own perspective as a Miami resident, the last thing I want to do is come here and eat my Miami Slice Pizza. Although it was delicious and the line is like very long in Miami, and I waited 4 seconds to get it here. But if I come to Vegas, I want to experience Vegas, and I think there's something authentic to Las Vegas, and there's something authentic to LA, and if I go to Virginia, and then if I go to Miami, I want to do Miami. And I think that by trying to have a brand or a culture that's consistent, I think you can have an experience that's consistent, like a good experience and great customer service, and I think you can have the same values and integrity and ethics that transcend across a brand and all the service-oriented employees. But I think it's important, in my opinion, to remain authentic to where you are, because at the end of the day, you're going somewhere as a destination. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, layering onto it.
Microphone.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm pretty loud, though, either way. You know, there's so much interest in guests seeking out experience as well. My wife and I were traveling. This isn't a design thing. My wife and I were looking at travel in February, and we were searching through, and it was holistically based on whether we could go dog sledding. And I think, like, as it sounds dumb, I get it, but I think I don't. But I think, like, finding these experiences, to your point, this might be Miami, but there's experiences that you can have in this hotel that are you know, whether they're casino, big show, whatever it happens to be, and so authenticity and culture to me can also be having an experience that kind of transports you as well. And we think about that a lot, like at the Crawford Hotel in Denver. Again, theme is not a word we use, but it's rooted in sort of the authenticity and the design culture that was train travel through the golden era of train travel. But then how do you kind of apply that without it becoming a theme, without someone knowing it's Miami? And the one thing, you being from Miami, you may say if you know that culture so well, you might go and say, I know this too well, the way that you do.
Sure.
But for other people who don't know it that well, who don't know train culture that well, they just might get the sense and the vibe. And if you do it right, they might turn it into an Instagram moment. And so for me, it's kind of this delicate balance of infusing it without authenticity and infusing culture without it becoming a theme.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's said here. Like, authenticity, you know, most people travel not to just stay at a place. They're looking for a story, for an experience. And if you could create within the space some design language that is authentic to its location or its context, you know, it helps with that experience for the guest. Sometimes in fact, on some of our projects internationally that we work on, we employ or we consult with a historian consultant, just so that when we're creating a concept, we want to make sure that we're being authentic and honest with it, and not just applying just pattern languages within the design, because that's an easy, low-hanging fruit to do. But to really understand the culture and the heritage of the space, you have to dig deeper. So, you know, it's important, like when we're looking at different locations, that we're always being authentic and we're doing our research beyond just what Google tells us.
Yeah, the hotel in our portfolio that does this best, and I had nothing to do with it, by the way. But the hotel that knocks us out of the park, it's actually the best example that I can think of off the top of my head, is the Shinola Hotel in Detroit. As far as being an authentic representation of the place and the people and the culture there. I've never seen it done better. And it's because it's infused into the partner that we had into the Shinola company and their ethos and how we were able to extract that and turn it into an experience that you could go stay in. But as far as like giving you guys something to look at, it's extremely authentic about its culture.
Thank you. I'd like to move to, we keep talking about the guest experience, right? And I want to move a little bit about the employee experience. In a place like Las Vegas, where you have so many hotels, and they're all competing for the same group of people that are working in their hotels. How do you, design-wise, how do you make it so that employees want to come in? It's not always just the salary. How do you do the back of house? What do you do for the employees to make it a little more attractive for them to come to work for a hotel?
Yeah. It's a great question. So it goes back to the last question, which is authenticity. We overused authenticity up here, but culture was the other word that we were using, right? And I think culture is super important within a brand or any kind of company or a group that you socialize with. And I think that in order to maintain culture, you have to value your employees first, period. Especially in a market, I think all of these big city markets right now is extremely competitive. There's tons of legitimate money being thrown in these places, whereas before, and again, remember, I'm coming from Miami, right? We had a lot of pretenders before, and now you can see who's real, right? The pretenders didn't last, and now the new, very well capitalized groups are coming in, and they've got some deep pockets. But I also just, as a human, really value loyalty, and I think that it's very hard to find in the hospitality industry in general, and then also in this new kind of Gen Z focused entry-level employee market, and you have to put them first, and you have to get them to buy in, because it's not the people at the top who've been doing it for a long time that are dictating how the culture goes. It really starts from the bottom, in my opinion. You have to get their buy-in. It's no different than running a sports team. It's the exact same thing. If you lose the locker room because their lockers are bad. I almost cursed. There was a guy who cursed earlier, and I was like, "Can we do that?" And then I saw him get reprimanded, so I'm not going to do it. But their facilities aren't good, right? And their shoes aren't washed, and their laundry isn't done, and their name tag is like a little bit uneven. Or they feel those things. And then slowly but surely, you start losing the team, the performance declines, and people want out of their contracts, and it's the exact same thing in this industry. So from our perspective, because we manage projects from, in a perfect world, from concept to completion, right? Through concept design, we do the budget management, schedule management, manage the expectations, and let people know how over budget they're going to be and how behind schedule they're going to be. But we see the first thing to get cut in design because of cost is the back of house space, and we strongly advise against that because I've seen this movie before. When you don't renovate the bathrooms, when you don't have multiple bathrooms in the back, when you don't renovate the kitchen, people leave, and they can feel it. And they're like, you spent millions and millions of dollars on people who are going to be in and out of here, and I wake up and I show up here every day to do a very hard job. And the experience is not good. And you have to prioritize that space. And the dollars you spend there are nominal compared to the return. So,
yeah, I guess I have a question for Hussein, and it's I can tell you for sure, we've all gone through the design process in this room, and it is, in schematics, we've got these cute little boxes, and we drop boxes, and it says employee break room and bathrooms and so forth. And I say, let's start designing, and we go immediately to the restaurant upstairs and the lobby and the bar and the guest rooms and so forth. And we don't come back to those spaces until the most junior person on that design team. Well, you just tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe Wembley does it totally different. But we don't come back to those spaces until the most junior person says, I'm so sorry, but you've got to go design the employee bathrooms. And to your point, in ground-up development, making an effort around this is how will they go in and out every day? How will they feel safe? Is this a safe path from? These are basic things. Is the mental health and well-being and safety of our associates, and pushing that up, just pushing it up as a part of design process can really help us. And I'm curious if you run into owners, and it's worse in renovations, by the way. You're totally right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing where we are spending more time on designing the back of house space, and not just from a layout and circulation standpoint, but really looking at the materiality of the space too. Because at the end of the day, it used to be where back of houses were very clinical in their overall look and feel, and it just felt very sterile. And now we're looking at lighting, we're looking at materials, finishes, we're looking at breakout areas, or just break areas for the employees to be more like lounges versus just this sort of a cafeteria type of a setup. So it gives them opportunities to rest and recharge, because they are actually the backbone of the front of house experience for the guests. If the employees are not happy, the guests are not going to have a great experience. So.
It's the backbone. All right. The next question has to do with something that we had to accommodate for during COVID, right? Where the arrival experience at the hotel became very sterile because people didn't want to meet other people. They just wanted to go back straight to the room, and technology was developed for that. But as time kind of went back to normalcy, it seems like the whole check-in experience, coming into the hotel. Can you talk a little bit about how you design and what you think about when you want to do that experience?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about our philosophy on it. And Walter touched on this sentence yesterday, and he uses it all the time. You have to meet the guest where they are. And so the answer is obviously it depends. We have young hotel. We have a extended stay concept in Rhino. We're working on our second and third version of this, called the Catbird Hotel. It's really fun, quirky, kind of elegant extended stay option. And it's got no check-in desk. And you come to the kiosk and you do the thing and you pay yourself, and the whole night you scan your ID, the whole 9 yards. It works sometimes. And I was working with a team that was talking about the design on the Amman project, where there was no check-in desk at all, and it was totally different. There was no tech involved at all, and it was a good example to me, like two projects that don't have a check-in desk, very, very different clientele, very different zeros after the ADR, right? But neither one of them had. So in two very different ways, meeting the customer where they are, and experiencing it, because Walter and I got to talking about this very topic last night, is what's the value in someone saying welcome back to the hotel? Do they value this, or are they traveling for business and just want to go straight? They're going to do that mobile check-in and go straight to their room, and that's a total value add. So I just thinking through midweek, thinking through who's coming for a vacation, for a leisure stay, really helps us kind of get into what that experience should be like.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be an integration of human and technology, right? Because technology is amazing when it's amazing, and it's horrible when it's not working well. And sometimes it's working well, and the end user doesn't understand how to use it, and it's not necessarily their fault, right?
And my dad tried to check in to the Catbird. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be sympathetic to that, right? You can't expect everybody to adapt, and some people refuse to adapt, and that's okay, right? Some people, candidly, have earned the right to, not adapt to technology because they don't need to. So, I mean, I look at the humans, and again, if their back of house space sucks, you're getting the worst of everything, right? So, but I look at humans as just a conduit of providing a service or a need, right? Like, I had a conversation with someone in my office today. I met someone else who we had met in our office before, and I had coffee with them in a location that was probably a nightclub the night before, right? And they walked me through the services they provide, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, this is awesome. We can totally use you, and I shot out an email and told everyone we could use it. And then a woman in my office said, yeah, I sent out an email on that last week. And I said, I get it, but I need to be sat down like a 4-year-old. And I think that we all kind of do that, and I think that raise your hand if I'm just way off base, but when you're in They should put a sign on that door, right? It's like the third person. But especially when you're in vacation mode, and sometimes we're in like this bleisure, I think that's the word, like it's business and leisure, like kind of blend, where you don't know how your brain's supposed to operate. Like maybe you're locked in like it's game day, and maybe you're just like so turned off because you've been operating on game day and you just want to relax. Sometimes you just want somebody to hold your hand and tell you how to do things. Same with like the airport, right? Like you choose the wrong luggage tag and you chose carry-on instead of check bag. So I think that the human element always needs to be there, and I don't think that's going away. I think we're seeing it designed a lot. I don't want to lead into your next question, but I think that we're going to have to figure out, because now technology is evolving so exponentially fast, and by the time something's built, usually what's in there is already antiquated, and there's the next version of it. So we have to be flexible for the future.
I've never had a good check-in experience in Las Vegas. Maybe people have. One exception, I always assume I'm going to be in an airport TSA long line. I'm going to sit there for 40 minutes and just kind of wind around, which I did yesterday here. And it's just the same. I came with a friend who gambles quite a bit, and he had the Fast Pass, and I didn't know that existed. And I thought that was interesting because I realized then that we were two very different guests, and I was thinking through that. But it struck me that maybe people have had wonderful check-in experiences in Vegas, but I just haven't.
I don't think I have anything else to add. I mean, I think from an experience standpoint, if the check-in experience is not great, that sets the tone for the rest of the trip and the journey. So, you know, having that human connection, and whether it's it may be an automated check-in, but having concierge immediately available to assist you, I think it really impacts the guest's experience going forward.
Right, they do say that the first 30 minutes of the guest experience is what's going to determine whether they're going to come back or not. Right?
It's so interesting. There's a hotel in Savannah that felt completely the opposite. I actually don't know who owns it, but it's beautifully done. It's called Bardo. It's stunning. Just fully open, anyways. Recently, the check-in desk. I walked in. I got a tour of it the other day, and the check-in desk is way off to the side and tucked in another room. And they said, "Well, here's the deal. I was walking with the GM, and he said, that's 30 minutes of the experience." And so what we decided to do was spend more time around the bar and bring it up front so when you walk in and so forth. So I do wonder from a design perspective, it got me thinking differently, because I had always operated under I love when I'm just know I'm wrong. And I'd always operated that first experience needs to be, but they had at least locationally from a design perspective. It's not that it was a bad experience. It just wasn't the one right in your face. So I thought it was interesting, worth sharing.
Also, just final tidbit on that, I think signage is so important and gets overlooked in the design. It's always an afterthought in design. It's like, who's our signage vendor? What does it look like, right? How many do we need? And then, then you walk the place, and then it becomes, 6 months of figuring out you need signage for other places. It needs, because that can disrupt a customer experience from the get. So I think signage is very important.
Right. That's why there's people who get paid to do pathfinding, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Very good. All right. We have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So you talked about the future, designing for the future. By the time we finish a project, too many years went by and new things have occurred. We were talking about Gen Z earlier, but now we're talking about Generation Alpha, right? That's the next generation. So how do we design for the unknown? How do we design for kind of the next generation, and what are we looking at?
We're all going to be wrong. So, yeah.
I
No
think,
risk.
just from the earlier question about being flexible, creating comfortable, casual spaces, flexible spaces that cater to different generations, whether from a age bracket or demographics of other types. That seems to be the way to do it, where it's not inflexible, compartmentalized. And it goes from the design standpoint, it goes in the materiality too. Make sure you don't want to compromise on the aesthetics, and never want to compromise on the aesthetics, but it has to be practical, it has to be durable, so it can cater to the sort of the the cross of different generations that are coming through the property.
And I think that there's just some core truths and basics to what we do. We got the opportunity to stay at a really old hotel that's operated in an old-fashioned, timey way. And it triggered for me that maybe our business hasn't changed at all. All the technology side, all the check-in on the like just the whole 9 yards. If you just scrape it all away, they welcomed me. I slept in a comfortable bed. I had a great meal. I had a drink afterwards, and I went home. And it was wonderful. And the hotel was built 200 years ago. And I thought to myself, all of this that we get caught up in, there's just these like core fundamentals that if we get it right, the hotel will be enduring. And I think just really going to those and staying with those is how we design for next generation, because we can't really answer the question otherwise.
I think that's a great sentiment, right? At the end of the day, I think we have a tendency, with technology evolving as fast as it is. I mean, I was talking to a guy who was talking about a robot pillow. I mean, a robot pillow, it controls your breathing. It sounded fascinating, but he was talking about this thing that you cuddle up, like if you're a side sleeper, you go like this, and you hold it against your chest, and it starts controlling your breathing. And it's saying that they were going to offer those. Wow. And people are going to buy them, right? But we've been sleeping forever. Like, everything that's alive sleeps, right? And so we just have like this unbelievable ability as humans to just overthink things and overcomplicate things, feeling like we need to keep up. At the end of the day, like, we want people to care about us. If we show up at a service-related business, we want to know that they care about us, and we want the experience to be somewhat seamless, and we want to relax and be comfortable with ourselves. I will say, did any of you guys go on cruises? Okay, I personally don't like cruises, but how many of you go on cruises? I won't judge you. Okay. Cool. Don't be shy. So, Virgin has adults-only cruises. Okay. I'm sorry.
There's some themed cruises.
They have themed cruises, but they do adults only. And what I like about that is they do one thing really well. They don't try and cater to everyone. And I think that in design and in hospitality, we try and just fulfill the needs of everybody. I kind of like the concept of specializing on a certain demographic and just doing that extremely well. And I think it makes it easier. I'm not saying all hotels should be adults only, or we should like segregate, adults from or adults only from those that have children, right? I have children, but I think that especially with the younger generations, like, everyone's guessing because it's old people doing the design, assuming that we know what the younger generation wants. And I can run. Don't put that down. I know. I talk a lot. But like I run a college class. I was a college professor guy, right? And I'm astonished when I learn how these kids' minds work every day. And every semester, I'm like, I got them figured out. I've been doing this for a couple semesters. And every year, they think differently. So I think it's an impossible task to try and figure it out. I think at some point, we just have to design for what we know and leave the rest to history.
All right. Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
They had a question. I don't. No, you good? Oh, they're
Signage.
fine.
So
No,
important.
go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Before we get to the property? Sure. For us, it's really embedded in telling the story of the hotel through our media and through our brand story as it's on the website, as it goes through social and things like that. So really making all of those core decisions that we were talking about resonate through. And it's if they can understand that brand foundation, if it resonates with them, that they'll choose it. If they see themselves there, they'll choose it and they'll be drawn towards it in that way. And it's hard, I was on a call yesterday about what we show on the Marriott site versus our teaser site, for lack of a better word. And how do we tell the story differently? Not because Marriott's doing anything wrong. They have a template, and so the story's hard to tell on the template. And so to your point, that's the guideline that we have. We have the template. That's how we can tell someone before they come what the story is like. We can use like other media outlets as well, like whether it's a publication or maybe Dwell decides they want to do a cool story on us or something. But we try and get to them in advance so they kind of understand the brand story.
All right. Any more questions? Go ahead. Good question.
In the guest rooms, what we're seeing is where, again, it used to be where you would have a desk and a bed and a separate location for dining. And one of the things that we've been doing for the last couple of years is where that has kind of deconstructed. Where, yes, you have a sleeping zone and you have a work or just relaxing zone, but those spaces now are that zone where we may have an activity table where that can serve as a dual purpose of whether it's working or dining. We try to create the living zone right next to where some of the entertainment pieces will be, where the mini bars are. So there is a thought process that's going through on all of that. But at the same time, again, like it used to be, it's very kind of formulaic, and then it's now starting to kind of break away from all of that.
And, another trend, like as far as like the core guest room itself, as to like the box itself, is we're watching very rapid growth of the apartment sector as an option, and everyone's shaking their heads. Like we're all seeing this, right? Apartments by Bonvoy. Airbnb other than this, and there's 1,000 options out there for this now, and the speed to market on this incredible. By the way, every big major multifamily REIT now has a hospitality division, which is just fascinating to watch how this will change our business. So this idea that I can actually stay in something different for the night, I think is going to be revolutionary as far as the box itself goes. And I think as far as not just extended 1 night, 2 night, 10 night, 5 night, a year-long stay, I think it's going to be interesting to watch.
I think something interesting that we've seen in some hotels is they're putting in workout zones. I don't know if you guys have ever stayed in a hotel that has a workout zone. They don't have them here. And by the way, their gym's incredible here. If you guys went to it's unbelievable, right? But I spent thoughts that went through my head as I was staying here, because like I've been here for 3 days now. I meant to come down and do something interesting day one, but I spent my entire day in the hotel just like working, right? Because it's just coming at you from all angles. You've got your iPad, you've got your cell phone, you've got your computer. It doesn't stop, right? And then I didn't want to walk all the way down to the elevator to go downstairs to get food, so I just ordered a room service. The next thing you know, I had been in my room for 6 hours, right? And I think that the concept of having we're going back to like buzzwords, right? But flexible spaces that can turn into like a workout zone, or you can do yoga, or the lighting control systems are extremely important, because even that, going back to your experience of like having you're in the same place for nightlife and then early morning coffee, the lighting can completely change the dynamic of a room. And I think that the lighting control systems that we're putting in places right now are very advanced. Again, advanced and not complicated. They have to be seamless and kind of operate autonomously. So workout zones and then lighting systems to allow you to stay in your room and get multiple functions is something we're seeing.
All right, thank you. Unless there's any more questions, I think we are going to be wrapping up. So thank you so much, Jonathan, Hussein, Brett.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.